The headline screams war, but the math says bluff. When Iran threatens to close the Strait of Hormuz, it isn't preparing for a total invasion, it's calculating the exact price tag of global panic. The strategic reality is that closing this choke point is mutually suicidal. It would destroy Tehran's own economy and trigger an overwhelming U.S. military response. They cannot win without regime collapse. Instead, Iran has adopted a gray zone strategy using ambiguity to keep insurance rates soaring while keeping their own regime alive. This isn't about winning a war, it is about weaponizing uncertainty to force political concessions. To understand why this threat persists despite the catastrophic risks, we must first look at the mechanics of asymmetric leverage versus prohibitive cost. Iran's primary tool for coercion lies in disrupting global energy flows using drones, naval mines, and swarming small boats designed to create uncertainty rather than achieve a permanent blockade. While the United States Navy possesses superior firepower capable of clearing mines or escorting ships through the waterway, doing so carries significant political risks regarding potential American casualties on the ground. This makes total war costly for both sides in different ways. Iran calculates that Washington will hesitate to launch an invasion unless absolutely necessary because domestic backlash over loss of life is a powerful constraint. The United States faces a dilemma where mine-clearing operations or direct naval engagement risk triggering a conflict lacking broad domestic support, while Tehran believes its hardline leadership can endure prolonged economic pressure better than the American public can sustain a war without clear political gains. This dynamic allows Iran to maintain a posture of constant harassment that raises oil prices and keeps global markets jittery without crossing the threshold that would invite a regime-ending counterstrike from Washington. The core of this strategy relies on what analysts call the bluff mechanism, where Tehran utilizes ambiguity regarding rogue actions or provocation to make high-force responses difficult for adversaries. By raising insurance costs and reducing tanker traffic through targeted harassment rather than total closure, Iran pressures global oil prices while maintaining its own exports flowing enough to keep their economy functioning. This allows them to inflict economic pain on the United States, Israel, and Europe without triggering a full-scale invasion that would end their government. The threat is credible only as long as they do not follow through completely, because if they actually close the strait permanently, it would likely trigger an American invasion designed specifically to remove the regime from power. Quick resource note: I keep a curated set of Amazon search links in the description for books, gear, and tools relevant to this channel's topics. Some are affiliate links, so I may earn a commission at no extra cost to you. Please consider supporting the channel by using those links if you find something useful. The stakes of this game are defined by hard numbers that often get lost in the noise of daily news cycles. 1/5 of global oil trade passes through the Strait of Hormuz, making any disruption instantly visible on price charts worldwide. If the flow were stopped entirely for more than a few days, prices would spike to levels causing immediate economic shock across Europe and Asia. However, if Iran actually blocks it permanently, they lose their own revenue from exports that fund the state apparatus, inviting an invasion that no strategic calculation can justify under normal circumstances. This is why the threat persists as a tool of leverage rather than becoming reality. States act on incentives, not emotions, and closing the strait destroys the very economy Tehran seeks to protect. We must also consider the potential for escalation in this fragile equilibrium, which introduces a critical nuance to the analysis. While Iran has largely abandoned tit-for-tat tactics for unrestrained escalation only after specific catastrophic events, such as high-profile strikes on leadership targets, structural realities still apply even in heightened states of tension. Some strategic frameworks suggest that following existential threats like significant losses, an escalate strategy might emerge where mining the strait is framed not just as a bargaining chip, but as a desperate go-for-broke move to strangle global oil supplies if deterrence fails completely. In March 2026, for instance, Iran struck 9 countries within less than 24 hours of conflict breaking out, demonstrating that when they choose escalation, it is rapid and severe. However, even in these heightened states, the decision to mine the strait remains a desperate measure reserved for scenarios where regime survival is already at risk from other fronts. The structural reality remains that Iran has moved away from simple tit-for-tat diplomacy toward unrestrained action only after specific catastrophic events have occurred, yet the prohibitive cost of total closure still acts as a powerful brake on their most aggressive impulses. The United States faces political constraints where mine-clearing operations or direct naval engagement risk domestic backlash over casualties, while Iran's hardline leadership believes they can endure prolonged economic pressure better than Washington can sustain a conflict lacking broad support. This creates a situation where the threat of closure is used to extract concessions on nuclear enrichment freezes and other diplomatic demands without triggering the full-scale kinetic warfare that would follow a permanent blockade. The U.S. Navy retains superior firepower, but political will is often more fragile than military capability in democratic systems facing new conflicts. This distinction matters because it changes how you read the news cycle entirely. When headlines scream, "Strait closed," viewers often assume imminent global disaster or total war is days away. The reality of strategic power competition suggests that states use these threats as a form of high-stakes poker where they want to shake the table, not burn down the casino. Understanding this dynamic prevents panic over impending disasters and replaces it with an understanding of incentives. Iran wants you to pay more for gas. Washington does not want a war that costs lives without clear political gains. The conflict is likely to remain in the gray zone, a state of constant low-level harassment designed to extract concessions, rather than escalating into open combat unless specific red lines are crossed by one side or the other. For curious viewers, looking at these patterns helps distinguish between rhetorical brinkmanship and genuine preparation for total war. If Iran actually closed the strait permanently, it would likely trigger a U.S. invasion that ends their regime. Therefore, the threat is only credible as long as they do not follow through completely. This framework reveals why states often threaten what they cannot afford to do. If they did so, the consequences would be immediate and fatal for them. The next time you see reports of mining operations or drone swarms in the region, look for signs of actual mobilization like troop movements versus just rhetoric. That is where true intent lies, not in the headlines that scream war but calculate bluff instead. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. I am a one-person team working hard to make each video better than the last. Subscribe if you found value. It is the best way to show support. Drop a comment with your biggest takeaway. See you in the next video.